Hey guys, another episode. Hollywood Bomber, it is 47 degrees. It is rainy. It is cold. It is going to be miserable in the hangar. So we got another busy episode this time. We've got fuel stuff going on. We've got oil systems going on. Hoses. We ordered a bunch of hoses this week. We're trying to get some stuff going on the instrument panel, get that going. It's kind of all starting to come together. We're going to have a special guest this episode, I think, hopefully. So we'll see what's going on there from another YouTuber and another cool project. So I got some cool stuff to look at. So anyway, let's get over to the shop. Okay, we're in the hangar here, and we're going to talk to Mike and see why he's not wiring the airplane. He keeps talking about he wires aircraft, but we haven't seen any action. Okay, in fact, I'm going to sit down over here, and Mike's going to explain to me why he hasn't been wiring stuff. So, why haven't you been wiring stuff, Mike?
Because we've been trying to figure out how to wire all the new stuff that Bill is coming up with.
I might be guilty on that part. Okay, so what are we putting in? Hey, Raj. So we ended up...
We added fuel pressure.
Which we're only thinking fuel flow. But
right.
Now we have fuel flow, fuel pressure, and a dual gauge.
Yeah, the gauge would do fuel flow plus it would do fuel pressure. Yeah. Originally we were going to do just the flow, but you said, let's add pressure.
Yeah, and that's the Electronics International, so we talked to them.
Yep. So
now we got that.
And then you said, well, since we've eliminated fuel pressure, now we just have oil pressure and oil temperature. In the old triple gauge, but that's an old gauge.
Well, the other thing, too, is what we did with fuel pressure and fuel flow, all that stuff, we got fuel out of the cockpit.
Yes, because it was all wet lines going to the gauges in the panel.
And so then when we looked at the other gauge, so we can just put electrical tape on the one part of fuel pressure we're not going to use, but we still have oil coming into the cockpit.
Right.
So now we said, hey, smarter, better. And electronics has an oil pressure, oil temperature gauge.
Yeah, OPT, oil pressure temperature.
And then they've also got the sensor. That'll work for us. So we're working on, and again, that's the other thing Mike does. It's not just the wiring. He's figuring out all the MacGyver parts to get all the stuff to tick and tie. Yeah, including wire. We had wire, bushings, fittings.
Yeah, so to do the oil pressure, we have to use a different sensor because the original sensors the Beechcraft used in the 40s is not compatible with the modern electronic instruments for some reason.
Yeah, so we've got to use a different gauge. So anyway, so now we think we got that sorted.
Yep. We've
got oil pressure. That'll be oil temperature will be sorted.
Yep.
Which meant new cable.
Yep.
Wiring, right? So we have to actually that'll be type. We've got to get that cable. Well, that's for
new wire. This is
for the pressure.
This is for the pressure sensors.
Right. So now we've got to get the Type K wire for and we'll get that with from either Alco or whatever. So that takes care of that. Which means you got to run more wire in the wing that you already are done with.
Yep. Oh, and by the way, someone decided we ought to have some lights in the wheel wells so that when we're doing maintenance in the dark, we can see.
Which I thought was an absolutely totally cool idea, which Mike didn't like, but we're going to do it anyway because that's his job.
Now, wait a minute. It's not that I didn't like it. The first question I asked is, do we have to do the tail wheel also? And you said no.
No, because it's too small. It's just a little compartment. You can go in there with a flashlight.
And the request was to have that wired into a circuit breaker directly to the battery so that you could turn those lights on with a switch in the wheel well without having to have your master on your battery.
Yeah, and that was our buddy Bob up north. That's what they did in their V26. So that's what we're going to do there. So that means we're going to have to do a different mount up in the wing root, which is, and that one breaker for the stick shakers up there.
Yep.
Which is kind of wacky, but.
Well, but again, that's running straight off of the
main bus.
The outside, it's running off the output of the battery relay.
Yeah, so that's
directly, so it doesn't go through.
Heading out. Okay. Peace, man. Be good. Oh, later, Gator.
I can't do that. I'm married.
Yeah. Illegal.
So now we're on to enunciators.
Enunciators. So now we've pretty much committed that we're going to go with the oil pressure temperature.
Right, which adds 2 more warning lights because you have
optional.
But
they're good. It's a good thing to have.
Yeah.
So
now
because
those can be up at the top of the panel, more in line of sight where you would.
Yeah. Now the good news. Bad news is we haven't. Good news is we haven't sent the panel out for paint yet.
Right.
So I've got to bring it back tomorrow, and we'll see about moving some stuff around.
You get the sheet metal crew on that.
And that's me. So we'll get that done and get that sorted, and get that. So then, and that'll change placards too. So we'll have to add some placards. So now that's gone.
And now we're looking at oral warning working.
Well, because we got Mike a new old stock horn, which was rubbish. It's an old.
That was the gear horn?
That was a gear horn, and that's what that'll be doing, is a gear horn. So we're going to get rid of that and put in a solid state Sound Alert,
Yep.
which is going to be right over your head. I was thinking put one on either side, but there's a hole in our over panel for a gauge. That's where the hour meter was.
And according to the specs on the oral alerts, at 28 volts at 2 feet, it's 80 decibels.
Yep, you should hear that.
And this is the overhead panel that would be right here with the pilots, and it would be like right here. So this is not 2 feet.
Yeah, so it'll be
louder.
It'll be louder. Yeah, so that'll be good. And even though you're going to have headsets on and all that, you'll hear it.
Yeah, even with the noise canceling headset.
Yeah, so that's cool. So anyway, that's why Mike is not wiring right now. But anyway, we're getting that sorted, and then I was up in the cockpit, and I think my goal tomorrow is to get that right breaker panel out. And then we're going to get that sorted and get all the dead junk off of that, and I need to make new panels and get those going.
And we need to be careful if we're going to energize the airplane for anything that.
Yep, it's got to be cold.
Yeah.
Yep. So it's because our bus is hanging in free air, dangling about.
Right.
So which is not good.
Yeah.
So anyway, okay, man, I'm going to quit bothering Mike and let him get back to work.
We got Sebastian working inside the aircraft here. He's doing something that requires a respirator, so I'm going to bother him for a second and see what he's got going on.
Oh man, we forgot to sign that.
So I'm painting the floorboards right now, as you can see. Just a little bit of acetone, get everything off, and then we're just gonna cover it with some metallic.
All right, so we're doing a little cleaning with the acetone, and then you're painting it over?
Yep.
All right, so getting rid of the green, I guess?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks, Sebastian. I'm gonna get out of here before I catch a nice paint vapor here. All right, next we're over here on the right-hand side, engine number 2. We're gonna be checking out what Dr. Bill and Richard are working on over here. Dr. Bill seems to be
tediously working here.
Doing that little fingertip work.
I'm putting in a oil vent overflow.
Overflow?
Yeah, it's an overflow vent for the oil.
Okay. Try not to drop the little screws and whatnot, right?
Yeah,
Well, it's just a clamp.
it's just a clamp.
Just a clamp.
Hey, Richard, what are you doing over here?
Oh, I'm trying. This is the prop governor. And it's not on. It's the mounting for the prop governor. I'm removing the old gasket that's on it. So it's kind of baked on. So I'm scraping it off.
Doing a little cleaning?
Yes, because we need a good seal. Otherwise, we leak.
We don't want that.
Well, it's going to leak anyway somewhere, but we don't have to help it.
Just trying to mitigate. All right. Well, thanks, Richard and Dr. Bill.
Sure.
Is Gary working on the cockpit panel?
Working on a cockpit, putting it on a plate.
Putting in a plate?
Yep.
Are you able to show me what you were doing? Or?
Yeah, let me get a Clico.
Oh, okay.
Holds it in place. Apparently this has an extra hole like this that they want to cover up.
Yeah, so we kind of, Mr. Bill covered up the holes we don't want to use and kind of underneath this.
So I need something that'll hold that in place besides the tape.
So if I remember correctly, basically he's putting in new holes for the screw mounts around one of these other.
Yeah, there's 4 little holes. Get it all squared up. Clecos allows that to stay in position besides the tape, so I can get all 4 holes perfectly lined up.
Sebastian over here enjoying the just waiting for the paint to dry.
We got all 4 holes now, huh?
All 4 holes.
Thanks, Gary.
Have a good day.
All right, next I see that Dr. Bill's moved to a different spot, and he's working with Mike over here. Looks like a little tedious task. Working with some kind of wiring, huh?
Yeah. Bill, yesterday I spent figuring out how to do all the changes he had put in. So we're adding fuel pressure sensors.
Okay.
And we're adding oil pressure sensors that are different than the original. And the request was made to add a light in the landing gear well, or in the, kind of in the nacelle, so that when we're working in there, after this thing is together, it will have a light in there. And that light's going to be run directly off the battery, so that you can go up into the nacelle, hit a switch, and the light comes on, and you can work on whatever you're going to work on.
And that will accomplish what?
Well, that way you'll have light to see what you're doing.
Okay.
So I got 3 wires. I got the 2 big wires are the wires that are needed for the pressure sensors, and the small wire will be the wire that supplies power to the lighting circuits. So now we just gotta fish it in there. Somebody put the battery box in away.
As I'm snooping around, I see a couple folks squatting down in a quiet, dark little area over here working on something. Looks like Joey and Katrina. So Joey and Katrina, what are we working on here today?
I'll let him tell you because
There's this access panel that I don't know if somebody may have thrown a chain or rope through it at some point, but there's a crack here. You can maybe just barely see it. So we drill stopped it, and we're just putting a doubler in just to kind of make a solid kind of repair here.
Okay. Now when you say drill stop it, for folks who don't work with that, it's basically where you basically put a hole in front of where the crack's going to basically stop it, right?
Yep, yeah, just in front of the crack, so it'll crack to that hole and stop.
Okay.
Got our rivet length dialed in now, and now we're just getting them kind of set up to shoot them in here.
Then you've been having to come out here and then go back inside to work, and or you're able to do most of the work out here.
This will be pretty much all here. We'll probably be able to reach up through the tail wheel door, get it all.
All right.
Just
Much
from
easier
here.
than trying to crawl back
Oh,
in
yeah.
a small area. So.
Yeah.
Mhm. Anything to add, Katrina? Just here for.
I'm just here to look good. Just kidding. No, I probably will buck while he shoots the rivets.
All right.
I'm pro bucking.
Well, bucking sounds fun.
It's probably the harder of the two, but whatever.
All right. Well, thanks you two. Have fun. All right. I hear some noises going on back here in the old museum warehouse. Oh, I think I found somebody. If I get their names, still remember properly. We got Sarah and Miriam, right? Did I get the names right?
Yep.
I didn't forget them over Christmas.
Nope.
I lied. I had to ask somebody. I remembered Miriam, but I couldn't remember Sarah. So, what are we doing back here?
Organizing or weightlifting.
Weightlifting, a little workout, organizing.
I like that better. Some things here like 50 pounds, so.
A little Marie Kondo mixed with the aviation. Is that what we're doing?
That's right, yep.
All right. So, Bill's got you basically just trying to organize things so we have a better idea of what we got, right?
Yep, that's correct. That way they can find items. See, we've tried the best we can to kind of put them where when they come here, they can just see them. They can just grab what they need. So, yep.
All right. Well, keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next we're moving over to the left-hand engine number 1, where I believe we got Dallas and Isaac working on. Dallas, what are we working on today?
So we just installed the carburetor box assembly finally.
Last time I saw it was sitting over there.
Yeah, it's been sitting over there for a while.
Sitting over there, and I saw you guys earlier working on this, but I decided not to interview you as Isaac was literally holding it up with his hands and head. So
Yeah, it's a little
now they
bit
got a
more
few.
heavy.
Yeah, now that you got a few bolts in there, I'm gonna figure out how to come bother you guys.
Yeah, so we're installing it, and once you get it installed, it'll allow me to figure out the hose lengths for things like primer lines, fuel input lines, and fire bottle stuff. So once we get kind of done securing it fully, I'm going to figure out those lengths so we can get some hoses ordered. So.
Cool. Thanks, Dallas and Isaac.
Walking into the junk room with Bob Schroeder from Provo, Utah, working on now called the high maintenance.
High maintenance,
826
826 Invader.
826 Invader. So anyway, we're going to show them some different stuff in the junk room here. We had Miriam and Sarah I know it looks crazy junky here, but they completely cleaned up our place. So we're going to show Bob all our cool old junk. But anyway, they did a great job back here. So lots of stuff, and even back here, we'll go back here too. And this is all takeout stuff. This is what folks don't realize. This is all takeout stuff. And some of the folks even were wondering if, with all the stuff we took out, if we're going to do a weight and balance. Yes, we're going to do weight and balance because it would be really stupid not to do a weight and balance.
Really would.
So anyway, and we kind of have to anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, doke. And Isaac's coming down here, going to ask me questions on the cable, so I'm going to cut him off. Okay, we're going through junk with Bob here because he's kind of eyeballing some of our stuff.
I don't have very big pockets.
Yeah, we're going to put them through a metal detector. Anyway, so some of the stuff, we're going to go through some of the stuff that we've taken out of the bomber. So anyway, here I'm going to point at stuff. So carbon pile regulators. These are carbon pile regulators. This is the wiper motors.
Yeah.
So the wiper motors, carbon pile regulator, reverse current relay. All of these two items were replaced with a regulator. Our Jasco regulator is about the size of a deck of business cards. Or deck of playing cards.
Oh, cool.
So that's cool. Motor generators, inverter, DC to AC, motor. I think they call them motor inverters.
Yeah.
I forget what the terminology. Yeah. Basically, 28 volt to 400 cycle AC. We took out 5 of those, and actually 6. We've got a couple other things.
There was that many in the Beach 18?
Yeah, it was crazy. Wow. We had one for just the fuel flow.
Sure.
Yeah, just crazy. These are autopilot boxes. Autopilot box in the back. And these were, these are all replaced with our STIC 55, which is about the size of a transponder.
Wow.
Yeah, and then you just think of the ampacity and all that. We had 2 100 amp generators, so we don't need that. Flight phone, which was high speed in the 60s and 70s, where you could actually talk. You could actually talk to the ground, which was kind of cool.
Yeah.
That is transponder KXP, an old KXP 750. 8-track. It had 8-track. Yeah, that was for Merv in the back, man. They were rocking.
And it's a Craig.
Oh yeah. Oh,
man, that was Craig Pioneer 8-track. That was the best in the business.
Yeah, they were rocking a little Inagata Davida and Zeppelin and Stairway to Heaven and all that crap.
Do you remember? I had a buddy that had a 4-track / 8-track, so he could play because 4-track was the very original.
Yeah, and Bill Lear, what was it? Bill Lear came out with the 8-track, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
This is, I believe, ADF antenna.
Okay.
I think that's the ADF antenna. This is just more doodads. That is that's the trim box that goes. That's your.
Wow.
How'd you like to do that today? That's your autopilot control.
Oh, I have a button on my dash.
Exactly.
And I push and it goes.
So kind of crazy. We've got some old oil coolers. They were red tagged, so they end up coming off. Lots of old. This is vacuum tubing, all sorts of stuff like that.
Right.
And then the old wheels and brakes. We had again our friends up at Cleveland. These are the old Goodyear Hayes wheels and brakes. So they're out of there. The big reason we changed a lot of this stuff so we don't break down anywhere.
Right.
So it's not a regional B25. It's not a P51. It's a Twin Beach. But the biggest thing we want to do is wherever we go, we don't want to break down somewhere. So with our modern
have modern parts where you go.
And a lot of these parts like wheels and brakes, a lot of it's common to King Airs and stuff like that. So yeah, we can get parts within 24 hours and be flying again.
So I just was in a conversation with Matt Jackson, who's the director of maintenance for the CAF, and he's taken a look at my videos on my channel, and he told me something I really hadn't thought about it in this way. He says these people that go out and they buy an old airplane and they do an annual, whatever that means at the time, and then they go fly somewhere and they break down because they haven't done this. Well, we've had our airplane, there was 0 in it. We have taken everything out.
Yeah.
Very similar to what you're doing with Jackie Cochran's airplane. And he says, with the way you guys are doing the wiring and the plumbing and all of that stuff, you're going to buy gas, oil, tires, and brakes.
And that's our whole deal. Is if we go to a venue, we don't get stuck there.
Right.
And we don't want to miss the venue.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So it's kind of simple, Simon. So it's not going to be perfectly original. One of the funny stories, in fact, Bob's over here. I'll show Bob here. We got this big box. See, it says Fragile. Okay, that is not a leg lamp. What is in there is a kind of fun story. Our director of operations, Bill Gorn, was up.
Too many bills around.
Exactly, too many bills. I'm BG2. So anyway, fun story there is Bill was up at one of his customers and they had some leftover from completion, and he called up and said, hey, I've got all this fabric, because it was a completion on a corporate jet, had leftover fabric, floor goods, soft goods, seat goods, ceiling goods, all that stuff. And
in the Fragile?
In this box. This is all enough to do probably 2 of our aircraft.
Oh, that's great.
And anyway, Bill called us up and he said, hey, is gray a good color? And I said, free is a good color. So our interior is going to be free.
So what was it you told me about beer the other day? I asked you what kind of beer you drank, and you said you're pretty hard to please. Cans, bottles, kegs.
That's it, and that's you got to be that. And actually, we're getting ready to go do a little bit of that.
And now for something completely different.
Prop drive quit.
Okay, we got something cool here. We got Bob from Utah, Mustang Bob 51. He's got his. We're at the airport. He's got his truck, and as you would expect, what do you have in the back of your truck in an airport?
A submarine.
A submarine. Okay, let's check this out.
He's going over to the Navy base next.
Yeah. Okay, so what submarine is it? 723.
Yeah, it's the USS Oklahoma City.
And that is, what class is that?
That's a LA class.
LA class?
Attack submarine.
But it's not a boomer.
It is not a boomer.
Okay, cool. Now this goes in a lake?
Yeah. Lake.
So lakes are kind of dark water. How do you kind of keep from losing it in the lake?
Well, in my case, when you put the periscope on it, in order to have radio control, this has to be above the water.
Okay.
So, but
yeah, okay, this is just a question for the uninitiated. You get to blow stuff up, like, merchant ships?
That's funny. but
cabin cruiser.
My buddy has USS Shark, which is a skipjack class.
That's a little smaller than this, right?
Yeah, that was the original teardrop attack class nuclear boat. And I can't get this out, but anyway.
Cool. So anyway, so you got, what's in the back? Okay.
This is the ballast tanks. It's got 2 ballast tanks, and that was one of my problems. It took on water. It was a good thing the prop didn't work because
so you pump air. It has an air pump, I guess. Or
not
water
in this
pump?
one. It's sucking the water into the ballast tanks in here, and it's squeezing the air into the watertight cylinder.
So like a piston?
Yeah.
Oh, that's kind of simple.
Yeah. So that's why it's got these rods to keep the end caps from popping off.
Okay, so what's its crush depth?
As of today, it was like 6 inches. So, but anyway.
Cool beans.
Yeah.
And it's powered. Okay, so you've got electric. It's all electric.
Yeah, it's all electric, and it's got a motor drive back in here.
Motor drive with a single rudder. So you have a rudder. You have an up-down rudder, or pardon me, diving planes.
So think of this as a trim control.
Okay.
Basically, all this does is keep the boat in control. This is the actual dive planes, and then you've got steerage with your rudder.
So this makes you go up and down.
Between that and the ballast tanks.
And that keeps you level.
Yep.
And
so there's several systems. There's a fail-safe system that if this loses communication with the transmitter, it will stop the motor. It'll move the planes up here and these planes up here, and it'll blow the ballast, bring it back to the surface. And then the other thing it has an automatic leveling device to try to keep it so it doesn't do this through the water.
Cool.
So, yeah. Anyway.
Excellent. And so what you're gonna build another one with like Polaris missiles and stuff?
I'm going to build another one that will look like it has Polaris missiles, but I don't think it's going to have the missiles.
Alrighty then.
Hey guys, how's it going? Another episode of Hollywood Bomber. So, man, busy episode. Lots of little things getting done. Just tons and tons of little things getting done. So, what did we get done? Well, actually, first things first. Up in the cabin, in the front of the cabin, we had Katrina and Joey. We're getting they removed the wet fuel line up to the fuel pressure gauge and the wet oil line up to the oil pressure gauge. So we talked with Mike a little bit about that earlier. We ended up putting in Electronics International FP5L fuel flow to replace the old dinosaur fuel flow. With that, we were able to get fuel pressure primary indication on that gauge also. So on our triple gauge that we had fuel pressure, oil pressure, and oil temperature, all of those we would actually end up not using the fuel pressure part of that gauge. So great. So we were just gonna mark that off or cover that up on the face of that instrument and use our new instrument for the fuel pressure and fuel flow. Easy peasy. Then we got to think, it's like, why are we even bothering with having a gauge that we're only using 2/3 of? So what can we do? Is the oil temperature a Borden type tube, or is it actually a transmitter type of deal? So we looked at the gauge, looked at the wiring diagrams and all that stuff, and it is in fact electric type gauge. So again, we talked to Electronics International, David and Blake down there, I think it is, super folks. And what we're going to do is we're going to be putting I think it's OT, something like that, an oil pressure temperature combination gauge in for primary indication and divorce ourselves from that original gauge, which means again, Joey and Katrina were taking all the wet lines out, so we will not have any fuel or oil into the cockpit. The only lines coming in from the engine will be manifold pressure. That's it. So that will be, we're just going to leave that in there, and because that is now a separate gauge, we'll just leave it be. So we're going to have 2 Electronics International gauges for each engine, oil pressure, oil temp, and then below it will be fuel flow, fuel pressure, all of that set up. The other thing we get is when we end up with the oil temperature, oil pressure gauge from electronics, they also allow you to set a warning level. So what that does is we actually add a warning, oil pressure warning light. So what we ended up doing there is up at the top of our panel, this is almost ready to go to powder coat and marking. So we ended up having to change this up, so which is a good late add. So we've got oil pressure and oil temp right up here, up in front of you, and then down here we moved our engine, left and right engine chip detectors out on the down here at kind of a little bit lower. So that's kind of cool. And then Gary took care of that work, and then Gary also took care of some finishing some holes out and all that. So this is pretty much, we've got 4 little holes to do on this, and this is ready to go out to powder coat and paint. So great stuff there. We still haven't done anything with our control arm for our elevator. We're in the process of, we got to get hold of a machine shop to do the work there, so we're working on that. And we're also looking at a better mousetrap to solve that problem forever, kind of come up with a forever solution. So that's going on. I just pulled out the pre-oiler pump, and now that the guys have got the nacelle sorted and getting things done, it's time to start thinking about that. So that's a cool thing. So that's what Katrina and Joey were doing up in the cockpit. They were really doing some cleanup and sorting some stuff there. We got a couple little corrosion issues we've got to work on. Joey also got rid of the old speaker mounts. There were 2 speaker mounts behind each cockpit, and then the mounts actually went into the passageway area per the factory. We took all that stuff out, and we'll be replacing that. If we have to put a speaker in, we'll put a speaker in right behind the cockpit, the pilot, but it will be a smaller, better mousetrap there instead of bulging out into the walkway. So they got all that sorted out. Below there, Mike was doing some work, doing some cleanup and wiring. Mike got the wiring for the oil pressure gauge sorted. He's got the wiring for the fuel flow sorted. We've got all that stuff done. And then he also put the wiring in for the oil temp and pressure senders and all that stuff. So that's kind of cool. He also put wiring, I think he got all that stuff done. And then he also put wiring in for the wheel well lights. So we're doing that. We've got to sort a couple light units and then figure out exactly how we want the switchology. The breaker for that, it'll be hot bus up to the main battery, but the breaker for that will be on up in the battery compartment next to the stick shaker breaker, which is up in the left wing root, right under the pilot's cockpit, in the wing there. So that's going on. Another neat thing was Sebastian. In fact, I'll walk up the ladder. I'll go up the ladder. Sebastian got the last week. You remember he was cleaning up the cabin, which is awesome. So what he did this time, he had it all clean. This week he cleaned he painted the right lower floor. I'll go up here because this is just too good not to miss. You can see that floor looks like $1 million. So we're waiting on the floorboards, the permanent floorboards, and as soon as the permanent floorboards go in, they can go down, and that'll be done. We will have to pull them up just temporarily to put the wing spar straps in, but basically that compartment is done, finished, and whatnot. So that's going on. We talked about wiring. We're going to be working more wiring up in the cabin and get that basically roughed in, kind of like a house. Get everything roughed and get our drop set, and then we'll do terminations later. But we're going to try to get that roughed in next week. Oil system. This oil system is pretty well set. Dr. Bill was beating me up because I've got to get the straps for the other oil tank. Again, he got the oil valve. He and Gary got the oil valve. I guess Gary and Jim got the oil valve all sorted. Got that put back together, and we're also waiting on some spacers for the control cables. George is working on those, but Dr. Bill is needing those straps, so I've got to get on those straps to get that going. And then Darren he wasn't here this week, but he's working on getting the rear tanks in. In fact, Gary and Nesh found a goofy piece of wood. We've been looking for ours, and we ended up getting them out of a aircraft, harvested out of another aircraft for a pattern. But there's a couple wooden curvy spacer things that go in here, and we've got to I've got to make those this week, and then we'll get those in. Basically, the rear tank will be ready to go in, which is awesome. Dallas and Chase, they were working on engine number 1. They've got the carburetor set. We've got a couple fasteners we've got to get for the carburetor, so that's kind of a pain in the butt, but we're slowly getting that done. Got some of the upper baffles all painted. They're done. Trying to think of what else was going on. The other side, Richard was still getting fighting the fuel lines and all that. In fact, what we may end up doing is we have the oil filters installed, but we may actually end up, sorry, Mike. Mike 1 is we may end up pulling those out and rearranging them. There's a lot of hose stuff going on. It's kind of like a big intersection. Everything's in the way. But Richard has he's got the couple of the fuel lines and all that sorted, so they're in pretty good shape. So we're still trying to figure out the oil filter kit. The oil filter STC doesn't really have a lot of direction as far as installation in a twin beach. It just says put it in and don't mess up. So that's what we're working on there. So that's what's going on there. Nothing much on this side. We're still putting felt in and all. I've got to check with Darren and see if he needs any more felt. Joey and Katrina also got the doubler back here. There was a tear back here, so that's done. So now that's ready for a little paint touch up. It's getting cold in the hangar, so it's going to be a little while for that. I owe you guys some more vinyl. I've got another half dozen names I got to put on there and get that on. What else is going on in the back here? Nothing much here. Like I said, just lots of busy stuff, lots of little things going on. Mike is still doing, Big Mike is still doing the circuit breaker count, switch count, all that stuff. So that's going on. We've got all the control rods for the cowl flaps. I got those in the ultrasonic. They're all clean. We're going to actually end up changing probably most of the rod ends on those because they're shot. So that's going on. But Dallas is sorting stuff. We're going to have hoses for Dallas and Richard next week, and they're going to start getting on. Dallas also gave me a shopping list for the hoses to get number 1 and 2. Kind of, I'll call it the second wave of hoses. So there's just a whole bunch of hoses going on as far as the lube and all the pressures and all that stuff. So that's what's going on there. Trying to think of what else is going on. That's about it. It's winter time here. It's cold in the hangar, but we are the guys are getting it done. You can see we've got the propane palm tree here that it's a good place to stand under while we're working on the hangar. So that's what's going on. The channel is HangaRatz. The project is the Hollywood Bomber. This is episode 65, and just crazy busy. We're still hoping for engine runs. We're thinking February, March. So it's counting down, and we're starting to get stuff going. But once we get the fuel tanks in, boom, we can put fuel in the plane. And again, that's just 2 big boxes and a couple of hoses. We get the oil system in, which is those hoses are starting to get in. Dallas and Richard are just banging it as far as beating me up, making sure I get parts. So those we're going to start hooking up pretty quick. As soon as those two things are done, the instrument panel, like I said, the instrument panel is getting to be a pacing item, but we're getting that going, and we're keeping busy, Mike busy on stuff, and we're going to start working on the sub panels and all the breakers. We're trying to figure out everything we need on this silly airplane. So that's what's going on. That's it for this episode. Go fly yourself. This plane will fly.